Would you be the jerk for wearing your wedding dress to someone else's wedding? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for not going to my mom's house for Christmas because she doesn't consider my son special? I have a sister, Anne, who is 2 years older than me, and is and always has been my mom's favorite. Growing up, my mom got Anne everything she wanted, whether it was new clothes, toys, electronics, her own bedroom. In a one-bedroom apartment, I slept on the floor in the living room with mom, etc. We were poor, so sometimes my mom would borrow money, take out loans, hustle, or play her luck gambling to get her what she wanted. But if I were to ask for anything, I always got hit with the next time. We don't have the money. I was also denied certain experiences that my sister got to have. For example, I was not allowed to date, or go to friends' houses, or even walk to the store by myself. My mom rationalized this by saying she treated us differently because of our personalities, with my sister being the diva and me the quiet one. I've come to accept that she loves us differently and have moved on with my life. I now have a son of my own, and my sister has 2 kids as well. For Christmas, we all plan to meet at my mom's house. My mom has also enlisted me to help with preparations, so I've been taking her to the store, setting up decorations, etc. I was helping her put the final touches on the tree recently and arranging the gifts when I noticed that Anne's kids had a lot more gifts than my son. Specifically, Anne's kids had about 12 gifts apiece while my son had 3. I made a comment about it, and she said that since my son is small, he's 4, he'll outgrow everything fast, both clothes and toys, so she didn't get him much. I let it go, but it still bothered me. My sister's kids are 8 and 6, which means they'll grow fast too, making her excuse a bit lame. I ended up asking her about it again, and she admitted that it was because Anne's kids are special. She said they were her heart and soul. I felt hurt by that, but I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. I talked to my husband about it, and he agreed it was hurtful and questioned whether we should go to my mom's for Christmas. I decided we won't go and called my mom to tell her. She got mad and said I was childish and needed to get over it because all grandmothers have their picks when it comes to grandchildren. She said she still loves my son and thinks I'll be hurting him by not letting him see her on Christmas. She's told Anne about it, and other people, vaguely, over Facebook, and Anne more or less said it's our problem and she's going to enjoy Christmas either way. I'm with OP on this. I think it's weird, and the favoritism expanding over generations like that too is just, at some point, you feel like you have enough, right? I would imagine it feels like one thing having grown up experiencing it yourself, but to know that your kids would experience it too with their own grandparents, I just can't blame OP for saying enough is enough. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for getting a guy kicked out of the gym? I, 30-year-old male, go to a Planet Fitness a couple times a week. I'm not trying to get buff or anything, but I like having a place nearby to keep myself in shape. I like the 30-minute express workout, especially when I don't have a lot of time. Yesterday was one of those days, and as I got there, a mid-30s guy was sitting on the row machine just on his phone. Now I get that between workouts, people pull out their phones to change their music or reply to a text while they catch their breath. But that's not what this guy was doing. He was just sitting there playing on his phone. This happens sometimes and it upsets me, but it's usually college kids. At first I just brushed it off as he'll get up in a minute and just went ahead with my workout. But about 5 minutes in, he was still there. 10 minutes in, he's still there, and I was getting close to the row machine. I went up to him and asked if I could use it really quick. He didn't even look up from his phone, just held up a finger and said, "Just a minute." I skipped over the row machine and onto another, but the guy was not moving. Every time I look over at him, he would do 1 rep to act like he was using it, and then go straight back to whatever he was doing on his phone. I had enough. I went to the counter and told one of the folks working there, and she went back over and confronted him. He was told to leave the gym and sneered at me as he left, and I finished my workout. My friend, whom I told later, said he thought I went too far by getting him thrown out. But the guy could have gone onto a bench in the locker room or to a table in the front if he wanted to just sit there on his phone. Gym equipment is for people who want to work out, not an easy chair with levers. Was I too much of a Karen here? Honestly, I think for everybody in that gym that may have wanted to turn on the row machine, they were all silently grateful of what OP did there. I think it goes even without saying that it was extremely bad etiquette and worthy of honestly getting kicked out if you're just sitting on this thing for 15-20 minutes pretending like you're using it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for delaying my pregnancy announcement to my bro and sis-in-law? My 31-year-old female, sister-in-law, 33-year-old female, and my bro, 33-year-old male, made their pregnancy announcement to me 6 weeks into the pregnancy, and I congratulated them and was very happy for them. I was the first person they shared this information with. I find out 2 days after their announcement that I, too, am expecting. Me and my husband, 35-year-old male, decided to wait until the end of the first trimester to announce anything to anybody due to 2 reasons. My sister-in-law was expecting to be pampered and fawned over for her announcement, and we didn't want to steal her spotlight. I lost my mother-in-law 8 months ago, and we as a family are still grieving and navigating our own home situation, and we just did not want any bad vibes toward the baby, so we wanted to wait for as long as possible to announce. We finally made the announcement at the 2.5-month mark, and we announced to our first family at the same time with custom gifts. This really made my sister-in-law and bro angry as they were expecting I would share this news with them first. They just really yelled at me for not sharing and asking for any guidance and trying to navigate this on my own. I guess the anger is just coming out of concern, but this has been going on for almost a month now. Having tried to reach out to them multiple times, I now feel that I could have handled this entire situation differently and has me wondering if I really am in the wrong here. I really don't think OP's the jerk here, and I think it's very kind of high and mighty of them to be like, why didn't you come to us? We could have instilled you with all of the guidance we learned, having gone through the same thing in the exact same time period as you. I just don't understand why they're trying to exert so much entitlement over your big moment. This next story is, am I the jerk for not buying my 12-year-old a MacBook? I have 3 daughters, 11, 14, and 17, and 1 son, 10. My 11-year-old came up to me and asked if she could have a MacBook Air for Christmas. She said it was because her friends have it and it's useful for school. We have a family iMac she can do schoolwork on, and she has a personal Chromebook as well. So I told her, no, I could afford one, but it doesn't seem very useful. It would be way above the Christmas budget to get her such an expensive product, and it would be unfair to the other kids that she gets a much more expensive gift. She says that my oldest has a MacBook, which she paid for herself, and thus she should have one. My wife says we should get the 11-year-old a MacBook because she doesn't have a way of getting a job and making money like my 17-year-old has, which I get, but my 11-year-old has basically no need for one, while my 17-year-old does some software development and is planning on using it for college. My 11-year-old is now upset with me and says none of her friends use a slow Chromebook and she'll be made fun of. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk. I think as long as the Chromebook can do what she needs to do, she'll be just fine. I really don't know what they're talking about that a Chromebook can't do or is going to be slow short of some kind of gaming. And call me biased, but if you're talking gaming on a laptop, I don't really see why a MacBook would be the go-to regardless. I think they're just trying to go for status to look cool. You know, only the cool people have expensive Apple products. It's kind of the same thing as being afraid of having the green bubbles. Our next story is, am I the jerk for uninviting my friend to a Christmas party my girlfriend and I are holding after he was rude about my girlfriend's obsession? I, 30-year-old female, think obsessions are normal. And my girlfriend, 35-year-old female, has one. Kate's obsession has to do with the 60s. Kate is a nerdy and intelligent person. She has a PhD and works as a college professor. Whenever she's not working, she's always researching about the 60s and knows a lot about that period. My own mother was born in the 60s, and even Kate knows more than her. Personally, her obsession is cute. Whenever she talks about the 60s, I've noticed she's always happy, and she smiles, and it just makes me happy that she's happy. This year, after being in a relationship for 3 years, Kate and I decided to move in together, and we've decided that we're having a Christmas party. This is where I may be the jerk. Back in November, I got back in touch with a friend whom I hadn't seen for ages due to our schedules constantly clashing, and we finally had a date where we could both meet up for some coffee. During our meetup, we were asking about each other's family, and he asked how Kate was. I explained Kate was doing well, she was promoted at work, and to celebrate, I'm taking Kate and her friends on a surprise night out to celebrate her promotion, as I'm proud of her. We kept talking back and forth about each other's partner, and I mentioned Kate is working on a new project at work and it involves 2 other colleagues collaborating, so she's really pleased with that. I also stated Kate is doing a research project about the 60s in her own time, so she's really busy. This friend of mine was already invited to our Christmas party well in advance, and most of the comments he made were nasty and would probably get me banned, so the nicer comments he made included, "She's such a weirdo, I'm personally surprised she's even in a relationship considering the fact she's a nerd, her obsession is so weird it's amazing she still has friends." I don't know why he made these comments, but he said these once we finished speaking about our partners. I got angry and left. He had to pay the bill. A few hours later, I calmed down and informed Kate I'm uninviting a friend of ours to the Christmas party. She asked why, and I explained. She said she isn't bothered about what he said and he can still come, but I remained adamant that he's not coming to the Christmas party at all. I sent him a message on Messenger explaining that I've uninvited him to our Christmas party because of the rude comments he made to my girlfriend. We've got into a heated exchange and then I didn't hear from him for a day. I found out he messaged some mutual friends and they think I'm being a little over the top. So, am I the jerk? So, I don't think OP's being the jerk at all. Even if your partner says, you know what, it's fine, I'm not really that bothered by it, they can still come. I think it's more than understandable that you, knowing this is a person you love and care about and don't feel that way at all, are completely put off of wanting to be around or even entertain somebody that has so much unnecessary hatred or judgment of your partner. I mean, it's kind of like having an obsession with a hobby just like anybody else, like if somebody were really into Pokemon cards or something. If I were in OP's position, I'd in no unpolite terms want to be like, well, screw you then. Like, what the heck was all that for? Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my sister's bigot father-in-law to not come to our family Xmas dinner? My sister's 30-year-old female, father-in-law 50-year-old male, is a sad homophobic man. I found out through my brother-in-law, 30-year-old male, that father-in-law is not comfortable with having my wife, 25-year-old female, and I, 24-year-old female, over for New Year's dinner because gay. My parents support this, saying his house, his rules, which I get. But now he wants to come to our close family Xmas dinner, and frankly, I just don't feel comfortable being around him. I also don't trust that he'll behave himself because I feel like he's gotten worse over the years, saying things like, "The gays are ruining America." I confronted my parents with how I felt, and they said he's not homophobic, which is just not true. Everyone in the family knows and has acknowledged that before. I asked my mom if he could not come to our dinner, and she said no. I don't want to tell my parents what to do. It is their house. I don't really know what my options are, except I guess sadly not coming home for Xmas anymore. And now I feel like I'm the jerk for asking. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think OP is the jerk for asking. I mean, they just make you incredibly uncomfortable and they're not immediate family. If they don't want to address or rock the boat because he is homophobic and that makes you uncomfortable enough where you don't want to go there, I think that's a completely legitimate reason to not attend, as sad as it may be to forego going to your parents' house for Christmas. This next story is, am I the jerk for snapping at my sister-in-law after she kept insulting my husband? I have a sister-in-law, Allison, who is married to my brother, Harvey. I'll be honest, I don't like Allison. She's the most negative, bitter person I've ever had to spend more than an hour with. She has a negative opinion about everything, but notably, my husband. Most of the time I just brush it off, but we're all at my parents' for Christmas and her comments have been constant. Example 1, she hates that me or my husband refer to him looking after our daughter as babysitting. Unpopular opinion nowadays, but I don't mind it. We actually both use the term for when one of us wants to do a recreational activity and the other has our daughter. I say he's at golf, so I'm babysitting, and he'll say she's going to dinner, so I'm babysitting. However, Allison is only upset when my husband says it. Example 2, she needles him by asking pointed questions that she thinks any mother would know and then gets smug when he doesn't know the answer. Example 3, every time I do anything with my daughter, and I do most things with her around me because that's what she's used to, Allison makes comments about me being a married single parent. I've told her to stop many times. I've told Harvey to stop her many times. Nothing works. My husband and I have an agreement that we don't fight with the other side of the family, so I feel bad that I haven't been able to do anything about Allison's comments. Then, 2 days ago, we were all in the dining room with the exception of my husband who was finishing up some work. Allison remarked that she hasn't seen him all day and that it was really rude that he wasn't putting in more effort to spend time with his daughter or the family. I sternly told her that my husband is working to provide for his family and that not everyone can just take weeks off at a time. Allison then said, "Of course you'd say that. You're basically paid to be his bang nanny. I'm a stay-at-home mom." I cannot remember the last time I was so enraged. Before I could fully even process my own thoughts, I said, "Yeah, and you get cheated on for free. Tell me who got the better deal." For context, everyone knows about Harvey's indiscretions, but I guess Allison didn't know we were aware. Allison went silent, then left the table. It's been 2 days and she hasn't said a word to me, barely any to anyone else, won't even make eye contact. Harvey is livid that I brought it up, but I told him he had his chance to make her stop and he didn't, so I did. My dad said she freaked around and found out. My mom said she feels bad because Allison is quite obviously humiliated. I said she earned it from how she was always trying to embarrass my husband, but my mom says it's different because no one took her seriously. I think she threw a stone straight through her glass house, but she does seem really miserable, so I'm wondering if I'm the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk here. Some people might say it was a little too far to go for an eye, but I mean, OP had been continuously put down and just talked so badly about that, like, at some point I feel like it's excusable to say, "Yeah, well, you're saying all of this stuff about me. Take a look at yourself." Our next story is, am I the jerk for excluding my brother-in-law on our Christmas gift to my in-law? My wife and her siblings decided to go in on a big Christmas gift to their parents instead of giving them a bunch of little gifts. After months of looking around, they decided to get them a new sofa set. Since the one they have now is a little old and crusty, they aimed for a price of about $3,000. They decided that we will cover $2,000 of it and they will split the remaining $1,000. Their brother's been out of work and can't afford to chip in, so my wife decided to cover his portion and still had his name to the gift. She asked me about it and I was perfectly fine with it. The problem started when we went to look for it. We spent weeks driving around looking for the perfect set and he never once joined us. Despite not having a job, he never had the time. That annoyed me, but I let it go. The other day we went to a local store and saw the perfect set, but it was the last one they had and they can't deliver until January, so we had to take it with us. My brother-in-law has a truck, so we called him to come help us get it, but guess what? He was busy. I ended up calling a couple of work buddies and they came to help us pick it up, take it to the in-law and set it up. At this point, my brother-in-law has put in zero effort. Her parents are out of town visiting relatives and will be returning around Christmas. Last night, I told my wife that we're not covering her brother's portion, and if he wants his name on the gift, he'll have to come up with his portion or the other siblings can cover it. We got into an argument about it and she accused me of cutting him out of the gift because I know they can't afford it. I argued that he can't just expect to show up and take credit after not doing anything to earn it. She said he's been sad since he's been out of work, and I said he can still drive his truck and lift boxes while being sad. I said my buddies have done more than him, so their names should be on the gift. She called me a jerk for saying that, but I obviously disagree. I don't think OP's the jerk here. I mean, OP put in a lot of work and money on this thing. I think if they showed even just the least bit of gratitude, they wouldn't be having this whole discussion. Our next story is, am I the jerk for pressing charges on my sister-in-law? So, my husband and I have been together for 6 years, married for 4. My husband went to prison after he got married for a marijuana charge. We live in a no-tolerance state. They threw the book at him for growing it. My sister-in-law didn't really get along too well. For one, I'm not white, and for two, I didn't let my husband enable her drug addiction by giving her large amounts of money. About a year into my husband's 3-year prison sentence, she opened several credit cards in my husband's names, never paid them, and got it sent to collections. We found out last month because a mutual friend she was staying with let us know that my husband had mail at their house. When we opened it up, it was a collections letter for over $700. We were furious, and after going through his credit report, we found that she had gotten 2 other cards in his name. We talked it over and decided to file a police report for identity theft. Here's where the problem lies. His family is hell-bent on us dropping the charges and letting her get away with it. His mom asked me multiple times to let it go and just pay the debt back. It's racked to over $1,700. We can't just pay it back. Am I the jerk here? My husband doesn't think so, but everyone else does. 1,000,000% OP is not the jerk here, especially if you're not in a financial position to just look past $1,700, and just about most people, I would argue, are not in a position to just sniff at $1,700 and forget about it. You can't look past somebody that committed such blatant identity theft like that. This next story is, am I the jerk for turning away my sister at the door after she drove across the country to see me? I, 28-year-old female, have always been incredibly close with my sister, 30-year-old female, who we'll call Sam. Since we've been kids, we always hung out together, shared friend groups, hobbies, interests, and genuinely liked being around each other. However, she recently got a new girlfriend, 29-year-old female, Trisha, and our dynamic has changed. I don't care for Trisha at all. She's not really rude or unpleasant, but I just don't vibe with her and think she's a bit annoying. I've expressed this to Sam, which resulted in one of our biggest arguments to date. I understand that my opinion doesn't matter in their relationship, but I just don't enjoy being around Trisha. So Sam and I have seen each other less and less and have been getting into more and more arguments. I recently moved halfway across the country for my job, and Sam asked if she can come and visit. I excitedly said yes, as I wanted to show her all the new hiking spots by me, and I genuinely wanted to have sister time again. However, she then asked if Trisha could come along as well. I don't really have the space or means of hosting at my new place, and despite Sam saying they would happily sleep on the floor or the couch, I just didn't really want to be on while she was around. I told my sister I really just wanted it to be her and I hanging out and exploring this side of the country, and thus begun another argument. Eventually, I told her, either come along or don't come at all, which I half assumed would put an end to the visitation plans, but later she agreed she would come alone. Fast forward to when she was planning on visiting. I'm getting excited and have a whole plan for the week mapped out. Sam texts me when she leaves her place, and since I know it's a 15-hour drive, yes, she chose to take it straight through, she would be arriving at my place around 10 p.m. 10 p.m. rolls around and she knocks on my door, and I open it up to both Sam and Trisha. I didn't even know what to say or do. I was so shocked. Both of them looked happy to see me, but I just couldn't understand what happened. Eventually, the anger and embarrassment caught up with me, and I refused to let them in. Things got a little heated and frustrating, and it resulted in me telling them to angrily go find a motel somewhere or drive home. They both chose to get a motel after many curse words and yelling, which is where they are right now. My family is furious with me for making them look for a motel so late at night. Even though it's a pretty highly populated area with many options around, I'm quite embarrassed and worked up over the whole thing, but don't think I made the wrong move considering I set my boundaries pretty clearly earlier. I feel like I might have overreacted, as I genuinely don't think Sam or Trisha will ever speak to me again. I just can't believe my entire relationship with my sister has come to such a screeching halt over a girlfriend she's had for just over a year. Am I the jerk? I really don't think OP's the jerk here, because they try to drop the ball on you. They said one thing and did the complete opposite, and that's just not cool. You set a boundary very clearly. They said, okay, I'm going to obey that boundary, and then just straight up dumped on it. Took a poo-poo right on your doorstep, stepped in it, smeared it all over their shoes, and wanted to walk right into your own home. Our next story is, am I the jerk for wearing my wedding dress to someone else's wedding? I, 20-year-old female, married my husband 2 years ago. We aren't rich and don't care that much about weddings, so I wore my prom dress to my wedding. It's not a super fancy dress or anything. It's basically a long sequin dress in deep dark blue with one sleeve. For the reference, the dress. My friend Sierra, 22-year-old female, was attending my wedding. Since the wedding, I wore it on a few occasions because it's basically the only one fancy dress I own. Recently, Sierra was getting married and I was obviously invited. The wedding color scheme was dark blue and she requested fancy attire, so I thought my dark blue dress would be fine. It's not white, and it's not even remotely close to a wedding dress. I also didn't feel like wasting money on another fancy dress that I wouldn't ever wear again, especially since we aren't rich, so I showed up at her wedding in my dark blue sequin dress. It wasn't standing out or anything. Most of the guests were wearing even more fancier dresses. However, when Sierra saw me, she lost it. She yelled at me in front of all the guests, in front of her husband and my husband, saying that what I did was horrible and that no one shows up at a wedding in a wedding dress. I tried to reason with her, saying that the dress isn't a wedding dress. It's the only fancy piece of clothing I own. I wore it to multiple occasions before and after my wedding. She didn't listen and kept yelling at me to the point her bridesmaids and her husband started trying to calm her down. She also said a bunch of unsavory names to me. I was very upset with the drama and decided to leave with my husband. Then I started getting texts from Sierra, who blamed me for upstaging her on her wedding day, for driving a wedge between her and her husband since he said that she overreacted massively and upset her friend over a dress. I decided to ignore them because I think she's being unreasonable, but a part of me thinks that I was a jerk because I wore the dress to my own wedding. So I really don't think OP's the jerk here. I mean, I don't actually know exactly what the dress looks like, but it wasn't white, so it didn't offend the actual bride. The only thing that they can be slightly upset about is that they know that OP wore it as their bridal dress. But that doesn't actually make it inappropriate. If OP wore a tuxedo instead to their wedding, and then wore a tuxedo to this person's wedding, would they still be upset the same way? Because, you know, they wore that at their wedding. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not upstaging her in any way. Our next story is, am I the jerk for bringing my sister's favorite snack to Christmas because my grandmother wasn't making it for her? My sister, 24-year-old female, and I, 27-year-old female, have always felt like my grandmother played favorites and liked our cousins better than she likes us. We fully admit that some of this may be in our heads, but the evidence is definitely there. For reasons I won't get into, she and my mom have always butted heads, and we've always felt like she's favored my aunt and her kids as a result. Currently, though this was not the case when we were kids, my aunt and her family live just down the street from her. And my parents, sister, and my husband and I live about 3 hours away. My grandmother is having us all over this weekend for a Christmas gathering. One of her favorite things to do is make desserts for everyone. She's usually very good at taking everyone's requests and making what everyone likes. This year, she texted us all and asked us what we wanted. I requested a cake that I like. My mom requested some cookies, and my sister requested these chocolate cinnamon pretzels that she's made several times. My grandmother said that she would make the rest of it, but she told my sister that she didn't want to make the pretzels again because she had already made them many times in the last couple of months for my uncle. She said that the other items would be eaten by multiple people, but she was worried that my uncle wouldn't eat them again, and so my sister would be the only one eating them. My sister was heartbroken. This is her favorite thing that my grandmother makes at Christmas, and she couldn't be bothered to make it once for my sister, despite making it repeatedly for my uncle. My sister also rightly pointed out that this is the cheapest and easiest dish that anyone has requested, and she offered to take home all the leftovers if they don't get eaten. To my sister, this seemed very much like the favoritism that we all talked about. She specifically asked what everyone wanted, made the things that everyone else asked for, and then left out to one small thing that my sister asked for. Even though my grandmother likes to be the one to make everything, I made the pretzels for my sister and brought them to Christmas. She was so happy to have her favorite dessert, but my grandmother was angry and said that it was her job to make the desserts for everyone. In fairness, she always makes tons of food and loves to do it. We've never brought anything because she's always told us she doesn't want us to, but I couldn't bear the thought of my little sister not having what she wanted when everyone else did. Am I the jerk? See, I think what OP did really is in the spirit of Christmas. If that's not going to be there, shoot, you made your sister's day, right? She can be as mad and as upset as she wants to be, but the fact of the matter is, you're not hurting anybody. You're actually enriching the experience for one person. How many other people, when OP brought this year, would have seen those pretzels and been like, oh, the whole thing is ruined for me? My experience here at Grandma's is inexplicably worse because of what OP did here. Only person saying that is Grandma. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law it wasn't my job to make her kids eat? My husband and I had his sister and her family staying with us for a month while repairs were carried out on their house. Sister-in-law has 3 kids, ages 5, 7, and 9. My husband and I have 2 kids, ages 8 and 4. Sister-in-law and I both work from home, so we were both home all day when they were staying with us. So here's what happened. She asked if I would cook for all the kids versus us each cooking for our respective kids. I told her sure, but explained to her how my kids eat and wanted to know whether she wanted them on the same schedule or whether she wanted a typical 3 meals deal. She said to feed them 3 meals. For context on how I feed my kids, we do smaller meal sizes but eating more often, so pre-meal snacks are big in our family. Seconds are also a thing if we have a hungry day. I also try to mix in a lot of different choices week to week so food is still enjoyable. I know her kids' likes and dislikes with food, so I took those into consideration when making food. But the kids didn't want to eat the stuff I was making. They were upset it wasn't pizza or burgers, or they were upset about tacos I make at home versus takeout ones. The kids dug in their heels and said I needed to give them the food they wanted. I told sister-in-law and she would go to feed them, then she'd get mad I hadn't given them the food they wanted. I asked her if she wanted to take over feeding her kids and she said no. It got to the point where the kids stopped coming to the table at meal times. Since sister-in-law was aware of this, I just let it go, because I felt like she would make them come to the table if she was upset by them not eating much. They were in the office with her sometimes when we were eating. The day they were going back home, she turned to me and told me I should be ashamed of myself for letting her kids go without food. My husband told her she was here the whole time and should have done more. He also pointed out we did them a favor and she was acting very ungrateful. A couple of weeks later, she sent me a text saying yet again I should be ashamed and how could I refuse to accommodate children. I told sister-in-law it wasn't my job to make her kids eat and that I had communicated with her while this was ongoing, but she ignored me and expected me to bend over backward for them. She accused me of cruelty to kids and told me I was a butt for thinking it wasn't my job to make sure children under my roof were eating enough. Am I the jerk? Yeah, I think it goes without saying that OP's definitely not the jerk here. I fear for these kids growing up because their diets don't sound particularly great, and wholeheartedly, if they didn't want the food OP was offering, they probably weren't all that hungry to begin with. And secondly, when they offered to their parents to step in and correct this, they said, nah, I don't want to do it, and then get upset when nothing happens, or it doesn't happen the way they want it to. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.